Hello everyone, welcome to Doctor Who Day 2025, 62 years since Doctor Who first hit the screens with an unearthly child in 1963, the 23rd of November. Regeneration is one of the most important aspects of the show, and so too is the music. So today I thought for this video, for this tier list, I would be combining the two and ranking every Doctor Who Regeneration theme. So as we can see on the tier list, well, fairly self-explanatory. Going to be ranking the music. It's not as straightforward as, well, which one do I like listening to the most? You've got to consider things like how well does it fit tonally? Is it too loud? Maybe that's what you get with the RTD era, who knows? But yeah, it's going to be a bit of a detailed breakdown. So if you don't know too much about the Doctor Who Regeneration themes, then check out these Regeneration theme collection vids that I made, so you can listen to those Regeneration themes as you watch along with the video. Of course, please do make sure to subscribe. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers. I think we're at 990, something like that at the time of recording. Speaking of which, the time of recording, I don't know how good the lighting is going to be. It is, I've tried with a bit of artificial lighting. It's pitch black here in New Zealand at the moment, recording this at night, so hopefully I do manage to get it out on Doctor Who Day for those in the UK at least. And yeah, for anyone interested in any kind of Doctor Who music, check out my other channels. I've got a project I recently started on YouTube called Doctor Who The Lost Scores Project, which is where I'm shifting a lot of the videos currently on this channel where I isolate music or I put it together for collections like the Regeneration themes. For Doctor Who Day, I've uploaded a queue from Voyage of the Damned, should be up there now. So I'll leave all of the necessary links in the description of the video. So one difference between this tier list and the content of the Regeneration theme collection is that the Stolen Earth Regeneration, which is a Doomsday variant, that's not on here, and I thought let's just stick with the actual Regeneration themes, which is why for the first Doctor I haven't included the wild TARDIS noises and takeoff sound that you hear in the 10th planet, just because it's not really a theme in the same way as the others. And yeah, as you will be able to see, the second Doctor, we've got the War Games original Regeneration theme, but also the War Games in Colour Regeneration theme. And I figured it would be fun to include the War Games in Colour Regeneration theme. I'll share my thoughts on that as a creation, the War Games in Colour, a bit later. But let's just get into this. And I mean, yeah, the tier should be straightforward. S, A, B, C, D. S is obviously the best tier. D is maybe a bit crap. So, I mean, I've put them in here and it's put them in a random order, but maybe it's better that way, that we kind of go a bit random. So we're starting with the first Doctor, then we'll go to the third, then the 7th Doctor. So it might be better that way. So starting with William Hartnell as the first Doctor. Well, actually, I tell a lie, it's David Bradley. In Twice Upon a Time, we have Vale Unus, which I think EMS Productions called it, and the name's kind of stuck ever since. Will we get this in the Series 10 soundtrack? I think the Vale vocals work really well, surprisingly. I think they have just been ripped from Vale de Sem. I've never actually known how to pronounce that, but I think the vocals have just been ripped straight from that. But they do work really well. There's elements of I Am the Doctor in there. It feels more like a celebration of the new series music, but it just has this triumphant feel. Now, in terms of borrowing elements or just completely reusing music, that is actually going to be something that I take into account and perhaps lower ratings as a result, particularly the 8th and War Doctor Regenerations are literally just essentially, might as well just be stock music. They're just taking old tracks. So, in this case, where it's not directly ripping off other tracks, where it's actually taking elements of them with the first Doctor, I do quite like that. And although I don't count the Twice Upon a Time Regeneration, I don't really count that as canon personally. It is nice, but like the War Games in Colour, it's sort of a separate entity for me from the main show. But yeah, the music with those variants in there of Vale and I'm the Doctor, it feels monumental, and it's the build-up particularly that I think is really good. I think the woodwind in there is fantastic. And, you know, there's some nice piano in there. It works really well because throughout Twice Upon a Time, the regeneration is meant to be something that the Doctor dreads, but actually, as the regeneration happens, it's made to be triumphant. The transition between the 2017 footage and the original 10th Planet in 1966 is done really well alongside the music. I think you can listen to the music in isolation and it sounds great, but when you watch the scene, for what the scene is trying to achieve and sort of saying that the Doctor's facing his fear, he's regenerating, it works perfectly in my opinion. And I think that's exactly what it needs to do in terms of hitting that tone. The first regeneration is probably one of the most important scenes in the show's history, maybe top 5 most important moments. And the fact that they're saying, yeah, this is a big moment, we're going to make it feel epic. Some people might say that's over the top, but for me, I really like it. I'm really fond of what they did with that. So you can say what you want about the scene itself or the story. I think Murray Gold, it was technically the last track he actually produced in terms of chronological order, because we'll get to the 12th Doctor's theme, but that was just reused music essentially. So this being Murray Gold's almost last assignment before he came back, the one last hurrah, I think it's fantastic. So I'm going to be starting off straight away and putting the First Doctor's Regeneration theme in S tier. I really do think it is that good. And for the Third Doctor's Regeneration theme, I think it might be the shortest cue that we get for a regeneration. And look, we've just put something in S tier, but I'm afraid I'm going to start off straight away by saying that this is going to be going in D tier. There's a few reasons for that, and before the classic fans start saying, oh, that's outrageous, you're putting a reimagining of the classics at S and one of the original themes at D. Well, I get that, and there's reasons for it. It's not just, oh, I'm going to put that at D because I'm an idiot. No, there is reason, and I think firstly, the fact that it uses elements of the original Doctor Who theme, that's great. But it's the way it does it. That sort of whiny synthy, it's a bit silly. You listen to it and you just think, no, it's a bit too silly for me. The Third Doctor was a fantastic era filled with a lot of electronic music from Dudley Simpson. So it feels in tone with the Third Doctor. But it just feels a little bit silly for me, and I think for his Doctor, who has just died, he's literally died after radiation poisoning, facing the Queen, the Great One, Spider, for that all just to amount to, that's piss off. No, he deserves something bigger. Not something grand and orchestral, I'm not quite suggesting that, but maybe something that is celebratory of his era, in a way that this just isn't. It just doesn't really tick any boxes for me other than having the Doctor Who theme in there. And even that's not like a requirement. It's a nice bonus, but it does not have to have the Doctor's theme in the Doctor Who theme in there. That doesn't automatically make it good. So yeah, there isn't much to say. It does the job just showing the transition, which in itself is very simple. I've always thought that the Third Doctor's regeneration didn't really do him justice. So it's going to be going in D, I'm afraid. Potentially, I might, if I feel a bit kinder towards the end of the list, I might move it up to C. But yeah, who would have thought starting off with two things on opposite ends of the spectrum. Right, for the Seventh Doctor's regeneration theme, this is an interesting one. This is certainly an interesting one. It's difficult because it's very different to the other regeneration themes. It's spooky. It goes quite well with the rest of the TV movie soundtrack. I think it's a great soundtrack for that film. It does feel a little bit Americanized, the sort of score, the horror elements, especially the fact they're trying to mirror the regeneration with Frankenstein. That's a bit of direction I personally wouldn't have gone for. The music, of course, leans into that, and the vocals very much feel like it's sort of meant to be a bit spooky. To me, I've always thought of them kind of as like almost an inspiration for the Doctor's theme vocals we would get in the 9th and 10th Doctor's eras. The choir, I quite like it. And it probably has the most tension of any regeneration theme, the building up. But I think, even though it ticks all the boxes that you would want it to tick for the TV movie, for what that is as a Doctor Who story, which is obviously very unique in what it sets out to do. I think the biggest problem with this theme, more than any other, in fact, I think it's probably the only one of these tracks that I have this criticism for, is the fact it doesn't feel very sci-fi. It leans into the horror genre, which works again for what the director's trying. But as I've said, I wouldn't have done that. And I think it's like the TV movie theme. When you listen to that, you think, yeah, this is good. But again, it's very different to the traditional sci-fi sort of scores we get with Doctor Who. So yeah, it is tricky. I'm tossing up between B and C tier, and it really depends how I want to judge this. Does it do everything it sets out to do uh, for the TV movie? I think in the confines of the TV movie, it's a B tier, but when it's compared with all these other regeneration themes, I'm probably more edging towards C tier. Um, but you know what? Since it did everything that the TV movie needed it to do, I'm going to be putting it in B tier for now. As I go along, it might dip into C tier though, just because I am on the fence there. Right, on to the second Doctor's theme. And if you hear all this clicking of my mouse, that is because I am going between my notes and the tier list. Not that that makes a difference. Second Doctor. Right. Actually, we've got names for these other themes, haven't we? So, Valeunis is what this first Doctor one's called. 7 to 8, I think, is what this is called. The third Doctor's regeneration theme doesn't really have a name. I guess we'll call it. We'll call it. Here we go again. That's what we're calling the third Doctor theme. You heard it here first. Right, for the second Doctor, the original second Doctor regeneration theme, let's just call this The Time Has Come, because that's what the Time Lord says. Yeah, I'm just taking quotes to use him as the title names. But yeah, so second Doctor's regeneration theme, and yeah, this is actually one of the ones I've isolated for the regeneration theme collection. It came out quite well, and because of that, as I saw a couple people commenting, it is really spooky. It sounds very eerie, and within the context of the war games, it's perfect. That's exactly what you want. The Time Lords are depicted very eerily, actually, in the war games. The music used as a second Doctor is sentenced, or as the Time Lords take the TARDIS and get it on Gallifrey. All of the music there is fantastic, and at the time, it was perfect. The Time Lords were these entities that we really didn't know anything about, and the music perfectly leans into that. So Dudley Simpson absolutely nails it here. He didn't with the third Doctor, but here at his first attempt at doing a regeneration theme, it's really good, and it's the first regeneration music we ever got, really. So I think as well, because when you watch that scene, the Doctor's tumbling, it's dark, opting for something haunting, not really hopeful, as he falls into nothingness, it works beautifully. And the sort of stuttering we get as well, there's the bits of piano, the music, it's just a sort of, it's very unique, and it is probably one of the most iconic regeneration themes, because it is trying something different. It feels I mean, you certainly wouldn't really do sound like that nowadays. It works as a classic series track. Um, and yeah, look, I'm probably going to be a little bit biased because the War Games is my favourite story, but I think for me, I am going to be putting this in A tier. Um, yeah, it's very good. I couldn't put it in S. It's near the top, but yeah, S really has to be reserved for what I think to be the best, probably 3 or 4 tracks that we get. Right, the Ninth Doctor, Hologram. Good to do a proper new series regeneration theme here. The first one of the new series. And yeah, I really like it. I think you'd probably be hard-fetched to find someone who doesn't like this regeneration theme. And, you know, I think with this one, there's a couple of interesting points, because there are a couple of positives, maybe 1 or 2 negatives. There's not really too many negatives with it. The first negative, which has nothing to do with the broadcast, is just the fact, I'm going to rant that, yeah, they re-orchestrated it for the soundtrack release, which they didn't need to, because it sounded much better in that sampled, layered version that we originally had. When it's an orchestra, it doesn't quite work the same as it did in the original. The little problem I have with it is that about 5 minutes before, you hear pretty much the exact same track playing as Rose defeats the Daleks, and the Doctor uh, consumes the time vortex. I don't know what the word would be for that moment, but you know what I'm talking about. And yeah, because we keep talking about what I've isolated, I have isolated that as part of the original scene it was used in, that Rose defeating the Daleks, but that is one of the tracks I've isolated, and it works really well there too. But I think because you hear it just before this, it's a little bit distracting that you're hearing the same track again, but this time for the regeneration. I think tonally it is perfect, in the sense that, yeah, it feels sad, but it's building up in quite a hopeful way, and it works really well, underscoring Eccleston's dialogue, because his dialogue is very much telling you this is about to end. The leading man is about to leave, but you don't need to worry because someone else is going to be coming in and everything's going to be alright, and the show is going to go on. The song is ending, but the story never ends. That's a quote that we obviously associate with the 10th Doctor, but that really is true of this regeneration. So I think it's great. The original version, that is, I don't really like the soundtrack release. Particularly in the original, I think the piano work, I love that. It is beautiful. So I think this one also deserves a spot near the top. I would say because with Eccleston having to try and tell audiences it's a sad moment, but everything's going to be okay, the fact that it juggles that, I mean, that whole scene is just, everyone involved does it really well, but I think because of that, I am going to be nice, and I'm going to put it above the second Doctor's regeneration theme, which is very good, but yeah, I think perhaps the assignment was trickier, trying to balance everything with Eccleston's regeneration theme. I'm not going to put it in S just because, like I said, it was reused from about 5 minutes earlier, which does slightly detract, especially when I said if tracks are reused, it sort of loses the impact because it doesn't feel as unique. It doesn't feel as monumental when you're hearing a track and you're saying, oh yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah. So, yeah, I think A tier is fair. I'm aware that a lot of people would put this in S tier for good reason, and it is on the cusp, but just not quite for me. Right, the War Doctor, the sad man with a box, one that they love to reuse. Reused in the Day of the Doctor, reused in Lux. I don't think it ever works quite as well as the original scene it was used for, which was in the Big Bang. But hey, here, it's still good, it is. But I think you can probably tell from my tone that this isn't going to be very high up the list. And I think that is mainly because the 50th anniversary, what an event. And I just feel like you should at least be giving John Hurt his own regeneration theme. It was the last time he ever appeared on the show. Well, first and only time. But you just feel like, could they have at least found some music that would have worked really well? And I think there's some interesting things you could have done with that. You could have had music which perhaps hints at the Fury, which is to come for the Ninth Doctor, who, of course, thinks that he was responsible for everything in the Time War. But, yeah, it just... Dating it is not the right word, but it confines it when you're playing the sad man with a box. It confines this regeneration to the 11th Doctor's era because that is a track so unique and well known and associated with his Doctor. I just think hearing it here, it doesn't really work for me as a regeneration theme. Saying that, it is... what does work about it is the way that it builds up. The choir comes in, and again, the hopefulness of it. It goes along with what you're seeing. It goes along with the visuals, but I don't think repurposing a track, and at least with the Night of the Doctor, they blended tracks together. This was just, we're going to play this. There might have been a very slight variation in here, but yeah, let's just be blunt. It's going to go in C tier. The final empty tier, well, no more. No more, as the War Doctor would say. We're going to be putting that there. It's better than the Third Doctor's theme because at least it, again, in terms of tone, I like it. With the Third Doctor, I know they weren't trying, but the tone, it just feels like a mismatch. The Third Doctor just died. You can't be playing silly music. Right, what have we got next? The 11th Doctor's theme. This is an interesting one. It certainly is. This was the first regeneration I saw as a young viewer. I don't know how old I would have been, like 5 or something, but yeah, it was It was interesting actually because as a kid I don't remember being too sad about it. It was my doctor leaving, but I really don't think I was that upset, and I think that's because partly because of the music, but also partly because Matt Smith, much like Eccleston, he doesn't moan about I'm going to die. Some new man goes sauntering away, and I'm dead. Doesn't do that. No, he he tells you as it's going to be all right. He makes regeneration. He tells you that actually it's a pretty amazing thing. It doesn't have to be a sad thing. And for me, I think as a kid, it was perfect for me. Who was probably thinking, what? I started watching this 11th Doctor. Why is he leaving? Especially for this old grumpy guy who comes in complaining about his kidney. So it's the dialogue. I shouldn't be talking about the dialogue, but it is relevant because the dialogue is really good and the music goes along with that really well. Because particularly, I think you can sort of associate the music, even though it is bits and pieces reused, but they feel well suited to this because I almost kind of identify them with Clara's feelings. You have, I think Trenzalore is the first bit that plays, and that feels quite sad and a bit lost, a bit hopeless, and that's sort of what Clara's feeling. And then it swells into the long song instrumentals, which are beautiful, but it's the hope that the Doctor's giving Clara, and then it goes into, I think, I Am Information. I might have got the order of these the wrong way around, but I Am Information as there's the hope, but she knows that it's time to face the regeneration. The Doctor knows that he can't hallucinate about Amy anymore. It's time to go. So I think the music, it works very well here. And because the audience is meant to identify with Clara, and the music, I think, um, is evokes the feelings that she would be having. I think it's really good work from Marigold. I really do like the way they've done it. I'm glad that as well they didn't use I Am the Doctor there. I'm kind of surprised they didn't do it as he was doing a speech or something. But I'm glad they didn't because it would have been distracting, and I think I would use the word. I think it would have been inappropriate in the scene because I'm the Doctor. Not only is it overused, as good as a track as it is, but yeah, it's still meant to be a calm scene. You don't need it to be going over the top with the music. So yeah, I like the fact that, because what I do want to say as well, it is calm music. It doesn't. It swells into the long song, which is a bit more bold, um, and triumphant. Which is, I use that word a lot, triumphant. Good word, but because it doesn't necessarily swell like the Sad Man with a Box or the Shepherd's Boy or She is the Doctor, the 13th Doctor's theme, because it is different to those. I think it stands out in its own unique way, and it's almost a case of less is more, going for a bit more stripped back music, which aims to evoke the feelings probably more so than any other. I think because of that, and because of the fact that, again, like the War Games, I'm a little bit biased. I am going to be putting this in A tier. I think it's going to be at the bottom of A tier, at least with the War Games and Hologram. Those two, the music in those two, with the Parting of the Ways and the War Games, at least it is specially composed for the Ninth Doctor's Farewell and for the Second Doctor's Farewell. The 11th Doctor is reusing music, and I think objectively, because the sort of stuff I said about, well, it evokes the feelings, well, that's just my interpretation. I think objectively, because it is a bit more simplistic, it's going to be at the bottom of A tier. It's not quite as unique or iconic as the second, ninth, or first Doctor's regeneration themes. Leave the girl. It's the man I want. Look, I feel like I'm kicking someone while they're down here, particularly because I'm very, I guess, defensive and lenient with this era in the show. The mid to late 80s, where the show was struggling, it was on its last legs. I'm very defensive of Colin Baker. I think he was really good, and I think a lot of the episodes were pretty good. But unfortunately here, I have to be completely honest and say that this is probably the worst regeneration theme. It's done by Keith McCulloch. That is not anything to do with him as a composer. Uh, in those first couple of stories, he's not bad. Time in the Rani, Paradise Towers, Delta and the Band. I mean, he was doing a lot of music, and it was pretty good. I think he probably hit his stride in season 25 with Remembrance and Silver Nemesis. Battlefield was okay. It had some good bits in there. But yeah, look, this was the first we hear of Keith McCulloch. And it's almost not his fault, but because it's Keith McCulloch, that is kind of what ruins it. It has that. I mean, as soon as you. This is the problem, right? I would encourage you to play the music now. Just play it, listen to it. You can pause me, just listen now. And when you listen to that, I've got a question. Does the Sixth Doctor, Colin Baker, Drathro and the Cyber Leader and Lytton, does any of that cross your mind when you listen to that? When you listen to that, probably not, right? When you listen to that, you just think of the Seventh Doctor. Because Keith's music is so iconic, it's so good, you just think instantly you're transported to the Paradise Towers or the Cyberman fights in Silver Nemesis. His music is so synonymous with the Seventh Doctor that when you hear that, you do not think of the Sixth Doctor. And this is meant to be the Sixth Doctor's Regeneration theme. And I know this was done by a different production team to the... roughly a different production team. Colin Baker obviously wasn't there for the Regeneration. But because of that, it doesn't work for me at all. It does not feel like, in any way, a farewell to his Doctor. The music is just synth heavy. It's just whiny, a bit like the Third Doctor's theme. It's not like you can't listen to it, but again, it just feels a little bit camp, which is in line with season 24. But Regenerations, they can't be too sad, they can't be too silly. You've got to strike a balance, like the Ninth or the 11th Doctor's themes did. And yeah, I just don't think this strikes any sort of balance. As a track that Keith McCulloch produced, if it was for a different scene, I might prefer it within the context of whatever that scene would be. But this is going into D tier. I think it's the worst Regeneration theme. And I do feel bad for saying it, but I just think you have to say it doesn't work as the Sixth Doctor's farewell. At least with the Third Doctor, it's Dudley Simpson who did pretty much all the Third Doctor music. Carrie Blyton obviously did a couple stories, and Tristan Carey and Malcolm Clarke. We're not going to keep going on. But with the Third Doctor, it evokes themes of his era. Like I've said, this does not, so it's going in D. I feel bad, it's such a short queue, but yeah, it is really unfortunate that I have to put this here. But unfortunately, the way that, if you look at the behind the scenes of how the scene was executed, they were sort of doomed to fail. I think when you watch that Regeneration, it's sort of a miracle that it's even half decent as Regeneration, given that they didn't have the Sixth Doctor, and that Keith McCulloch was having to produce so much music at this time since what's-his-name was fired from working on Paradise Towers. Okay, the Eighth Doctor. It's a tricky one, and it's a good thing, don't worry. It's a good dilemma to have. And that's because I do really like this, and I love the Night of the Doctor. I'm a big fan of the Eighth Doctor, mainly because of his big finish. I didn't really like him in the TV movie. But we're not talking about that. So, yeah, I do really like the music. Again, it is just reused tracks. It is Trust Me and 1969, both from The Impossible Astronaut, and also from the scene with the 11th Doctor as his sort of fake-out Regeneration. So, it's kind of a bit of a weird coincidence. I think it was probably intentional. And you also get, I think, Apollo 11 in there as the War Doctor is revealed. But yeah, the music, it actually does work quite well, I think. And it's not really that distracting, actually, because Trust Me is a track you hear used a crap ton in the early episodes of Series 6. And yeah, I think, again, it's hard. I've got to just keep in mind that although the Regeneration scene itself was done so well, the acting, the lighting, it all looks fantastic and it sounds fantastic. And as he says, Charlie, Cass, Lucy, I apologise. That's all done really well. But yeah, look, it is really hard. I do really like this. It is very good, but it's between B and A. As far as the quality of the tracks go, they're S-tier tracks, but we're not talking about the tracks themselves. You've got to think about how they fit into the scene, and that is where the track goes down the list. I am going to put it at the top of B for now, mainly just because, it's just reused tracks, and they were already used for another Regeneration scene, which is a bit weird. I might move it up to A at the end, but for now we're going to put it in B. She's the Doctor, but not anymore because she's about to leave. She's the Doctor. It's a weird name for the track. Look, the 13th Doctor's theme, I don't have heaps to say about this, to be honest. It was one where, at the time, listening to it, I thought it was really good. In the scene itself, I was like, I like this. It has elements of the 13th Doctor's theme in there, so it works. It ticks that box of harking back, I guess, to the other bits of her era where that theme would play. So, that is really good. And, I mean, there's some good elements in there. Again, it's another one that it ticks the boxes for what it's trying to do. And I think tonally it works really well. Again, Sagan Akinola, his music far more than Murray Gold's was there for the atmosphere. And to go along with the story. Maybe with Murray Gold, sometimes they tried enhancing the storytelling with music, but with Sagan Akinola, certainly from my memory, I haven't watched a lot of the era for a while, but it was a far more stripped back approach for adding atmosphere and just layers to the audio that you would hear. So it's more ambient, and I think here, the fact that you're suddenly getting this big 13th Doctor farewell, we're going to go out with a blast. I do really like that. Saying that, I think nowadays, listening to it a couple more times alongside the other tracks, it doesn't stand out as much. But I'm going to put it in B tier. Yeah, we'll put it at the top. Because at least it is specially composed for that scene. Look, the thing with B is that we've got two tracks, because I also said that the 7th Doctor's Regeneration theme, it ticks all the boxes for the TV movie. Well, this also ticks all the boxes. And these are sort of tracks in B tier where they tick the boxes, but there's a little bit left to be desired, but it's certainly not a bad track like maybe something in C or D is. Is this death? Edric? Yeah, that was my it wasn't a Peter Davison impression because it sounded nothing like him, but those are some quotes from the 5th Doctor's Regeneration theme. The music composed by Roger Lim, who had a mixed bag when it came to his Doctor Who scores. Some weird stuff in there in Arc of Infinity or Black Orchid, but certainly towards the end he had some great... His two final scores were fantastic. The Caves of Androzani, Revelation of the Daleks. Caves of Androzani in particular is one of the best Doctor Who scores. But, well, I say but, there isn't really a but with this actually. The music, it's more about the atmosphere. It's not really going to give you any emotional benefits. It's about as synth heavy as you could ask for, which is kind of what you want for this 5th Doctor's era, which is full of synth from composers from Peter Howe to Paddy Kingsland to Roger Lim. So, that all feels appropriate. And again, with these Regeneration themes, you want it to fit the tone of the story, but if it feels like it, it's got elements of the sort of music that you would hear in the other stories from that Doctor, then I think that is a very important box to tick. So perhaps you would say that it doesn't necessarily tie into the fact he's done this big heroic act, but that's kind of one of the good things about it, actually, because the new series, you get the you'd get all of that. With this, it's obvious that the 5th Doctor is a hero. He's just met Peri. The stuff with Big Finish and the 5th Doctor and Peri, that's good. But if you don't count that as canon, then the fact that he's essentially just met her, and he's taken her to this terrible place, he's done everything, he's crashed his ship, he's nearly died from, he has died from spectroxemia, he's done all of that to get her safe, and then he dies, and there's this bleak score, and there's not really any element to suggest he's a hero, but you know deep down he's a hero. Well, that's just about all you can ask for from the classic series, where the storytelling was enough to give you those themes. That's not a criticism of the new series as such. I just think stories like the Caves of Androzani are a masterclass from everyone involved. Roger Lim, Peter Davison, even John Nathan Turner telling everyone a woman would be the new Doctor for publicity. Of course, Graham Harper as well with the direction. It's a production team at the top of the game. And because of that, this theme, it's great, and yeah, that sort of harsh ethereal feel of it is iconic, and I don't think I'm going to put it in S. Again, it's close. It's going to be going in A tier. It's not better than Hologram. Is it better than the Second Doctor's theme? It's very similar, sort of, and it does feel sort of harsh and more simplistic. That is tricky. It's better than the 11th Doctor's because, again, it's unique to the story. And I think it's probably more objectively appropriate for the Regeneration. I'm going to put it above the Second Doctor's. I am. Yeah, we'll put it there. I think you can't really go wrong with Roger Lim here. He's at the top of his game with his Doctor Who work. The 14th Doctor's theme. Look, it's, to be honest, guys, it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? Not necessarily the score, but just kind of the scene itself. Can I even put this in the list? It's not even a regeneration, is it? It's a bi-generation. The music, it's sort of, there's bits and pieces all over the place. There's a hologram variant in there because why not? There's a lot going on, and it's not bad. It's I don't have much to say about it. I just it does the job, but it doesn't feel that memorable. When you look at these other pictures, you sort of instantly hear the music. You hear the sound effects. Oh, when I look at that, I kind of draw a blank, really. There's not much going on there. And yeah, just because the other regenerations, they happen. Well, they happen. You know, it's regenerations that happen. You have the scene starting, the music coming in, and then the regeneration happens. With this, it just feels a little bit disjointed. Is he regenerating? Pull, piss off. Why? Why are we doing that? We're not going to complain about bi-generations. But because of that, the score just doesn't work, because it kind of just stops for the scene where he tells him to pull Shooty out of him, which sounds weird. But you'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen the giggle. Yeah, it's I don't know. There's a lot going on in my head here. I've got all kind of thoughts about this because I'm trying to justify the fact that I don't think it's very good. Yeah, I'm going to be putting this in D. No, I'm not. I'll put it in C. Yeah, I'll put it in C because at least, again, if we're going to look at things like how it fits into the story, it's not as if tonally I think it is silly, and it is sort of hopeful. And look, it's the Murray Gold strings, it's the orchestra, which is good music usually. So I think putting this in C is fair. Right, the 12th Doctor is a really interesting one because he also reuses music. We've got technically 2 tracks. This is sort of subjective how you want to do it. You've got Here's His Hope leading into a variation of The Shepherd's Boy. I kind of count both. I'm aware that some people will only count The Shepherd's Boy. Either way, you've essentially just got reused music, which is a little bit of a weakness here. But it works really well. The Shepherd's Boy, you just associate that with the 12th Doctor's speeches about don't eat pears and all of that stuff. So I think, as far as tracks go, it was the best one they could have picked if they weren't going to produce any new music for the scene. I can see why, if Murray Gold was thinking, right, how do I score this? Oh, I know, I'll go back to that score from Series 9, from Heaven's 10. What was it called? Yeah, The Shepherd's Boy. We'll go back to that. I can see why I did it. And at least they changed bits of it to, I guess, fit the scene in a different way. Saying that, it worked better in Heaven's 10. I would say the original use of it is usually going to be the better use. But look, The Shepherd's Boy, because it's such a good track, you feel that this is monumental. It works alongside the speech, and because of that, it's refreshing that you're getting a regeneration theme in the new series that actually, well, actually, not just for the new series, but I think of all the regenerations, it's the one that feels the most energetic, and the one, come on, we're going to regenerate, let's go, we're about to do this. The music really gives a feel of, actually, this is quite an exciting event, we're about to get Jodie Whittaker. So, yeah, I think because of that approach, it's unique and it's refreshing, and it gets bonus points for that. So, we're not going to waste time, and, yeah, look, I'm going to be putting it in A. I'm going to put it at the bottom of A for now. Just because I think maybe the use of tracks for the 11th Doctor's theme was a bit more clever. But I do really like the 12th Doctor's one, even though you can see there's 5 tracks above it. That's not to say that this by any means is near some of these ones. I think it is really good. So we've got the second Doctor War Games and Color Regeneration theme. I don't know what to call this, but I guess since we see the TARDIS hurtling towards Earth, we'll call it Exile. I'm not one for naming tracks, but yeah, hopefully this is one. It's another one that's unreleased. Hopefully this is one that does get released at some point. It's one that I attempted isolating for that Regeneration theme collection. It was tricky work. Didn't have access to the 5.1 mix, which is probably why it didn't come out that well. But you don't care about the technical stuff. Why would you? So, yeah, the War Games in Colour, I'm not going to rant about that. I bought it, but it's somewhere. It's... Oh, hang on. Forget about it. We'll put Tom front and centre. Yeah. It's still in its plastic wrap. And that's mainly because the War Games was my favourite story, so the fact I can have a special edition release of it is a luxury not many people get for their favourite stories, unless you're a fan of stories that happen to be missing and animated, or you like Spear from Space, which had about 15 releases. But yeah, look, I haven't opened it just because from what I've seen, it does... I don't want to say butcher, that's a strong word, but it does chop and change and sort of... they have their own... They make their own mark on the War Games, and they change the narrative in ways that I don't agree with, and make creative decisions I don't agree with, particularly with the music and some of the sound elements. But with the War Games in Colour, with the Regeneration theme, I will give credit where credit is due. The fact that they take the original and they make it modern, they enhance it, they add orchestral elements to that. I say fair play to that, and I'm glad they did that, and I do really like it. It's not as good as the original, much like the War Games in Colour, which it is not going to be as good as the original. But yeah, the War Games in Colour, the music it is really good, and I would encourage you to listen to it now, so you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, the elements of the original, but also the synth and piano you get in there, it sounds great to me. I do like the build up. The build up's the best bit. I think maybe the end is the end of the track. The way it ends, I don't really like that fade of the instruments. It feels a little bit abrupt. But personally, I think what would have been really cool is if we had maybe a hint of the music from Spearhead from Space, or any other sort of music from the John Pertwee era, because you got to think, right, this is one of those extremely rare circumstances where you have a track that not only represents a transition from the second to the third Doctor, it's representing a transition from the 1960s to the 1970s, because you literally get footage from the 1960s and footage from the 1970s in the same scene. So I think taking advantage of such a unique circumstance, blend elements of 60s and 70s music in there. You can make it modern, which is great, and I think it works well. Like I said, fair play for that. But if there was elements of that Pertwee score from Spearhead from Space, some of that woodwind, I think that could have been a really nice touch. I mean, at this point we are nitpicking. But yeah, I think maybe a bit more of a hint of the Dudley Simpson style, which was so unique to Doctor Who, that would have taken this potentially even from the lower area of A tier to potentially competing with Hologram and Is This Death. So yeah, it's going to be at the bottom of A tier. It is really good, but I think yeah, potentially if there was a bit more of a hint to the third Doctor's era and Dudley Simpson, it could have been potentially between these two here. Right, although saying that, it wouldn't have been better than the original War Games in Colour. War Games, so it probably would have been there if it had met those requirements that I would have asked for. Okay, as we near the end of the video, I think we come to what is the most iconic Regeneration theme. Valet de Chim. Vale de Kim. Valet de Kim. It's Valet de Chim, isn't it? That's how they sound in the soundtrack. It's one that I hear everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people pronounce it differently. But it is Latin, so maybe make your tracks in English, guys. But this one, I can talk about what's good and what's bad. But I think it is one of those situations where you just say, from an objective point of view, it's just an S tier track. And I don't think, I'd be surprised if many people argued against that. You can say what you want if it's over the top, but it's one of those moments like with Doomsday where you just listen to the music and you say, you know what, maybe they're forcing emotions, maybe they're trying too hard, but it just works and it is a deserved send off. You hear elements of the Valet vocals in the Waters of Mars and the End of Time. It builds up to this. This is a very built up to moment with the Ood saying, this song is ending, but the story never ends. You get hints that the song is ending and Planet the Ood. So this really does feel like just the end of all this build up. It feels rewarding when you listen to this track. You say, you know what, this is time for the song to end, and the story will never end. But the 10th Doctor's going to go, and it is sad, but it's also this epic theme, and it ticks all the boxes for what Russell T Davies and Murray Gold wanted to do. You can criticize that era of the show if the music did things you didn't agree with, but when you're talking about music ticking boxes like The Power of the Doctor, like the TV music, like the TV movie, this smashes it out of the park with ticking all the boxes. It's going to go in S. It's going to go at the very top for now. Will there be a change? We'll see. But certainly the most iconic Regeneration theme. It's just glorious, isn't it? There's not really any negative things you can say about the song itself. It is so good, and the vocals are great. It is sad, but it's also just so fun to listen to. And yeah, when you watch that Regeneration, you just say, fair play, guys. What a great end to the era. So now we've got two left, the 15th and the 4th Doctor. I'm thinking who I want to end it with. And do I end it with an unnamed track that we have for the 15th Doctor? I guess it's just called Absolute Joy, isn't it? Or do I end it with It's the End, which is the name of the 4th Doctor's track? I think it would be fitting to end it with the most recent one. So we're going to go for Tom Baker first. We'll move that ahead. And we've just had one heavy hitter. But for me, guys, I'm going to be completely honest. I think that this is really hard. For me right now, it is between this Paddy Kingsland masterpiece and this Murray Gold Spectacular for what is the best Doctor Who Regeneration theme. Shooting Out was one is well, we'll see. That could be quite close, but I think it is between the 4th and 10th Doctor for the best Regeneration theme before I decide which one is the best. I'm going to say that, Paddy Kingsland, he's one of my favourite Doctor Who composers. Whether it was the Gopalis, Castrovalva, Frontios, Mulgen ID, you name it. Whatever the story was, his music always fitted the story. It was iconic, and Legopolis was just an incredible soundtrack. And this, as a Regeneration theme, it has everything you could ask for. It has the epic build-up, it has the tantalising music as the 4th Doctor, he's dangling, and then he falls. And actually, as he falls, the music at about 2 minutes 13 into the track itself. That is the only problem I have with it. It's I don't even know how to explain it. I'm not as much of a music expert as you might believe with having a Doctor Who music channel, but the music, as we get that crane shot panning down, as we see the Doctor on the ground, the music sort of, the melody sort of just dropping down, sounds a bit, it's a very fantasy music sort of sound to it, and I don't really like it. It's a little bit whimsical, and it's almost like it's sort of making a joke out of the fact the Doctor's just fallen to Earth, but we'll play this silly little music and everything's okay. And maybe that's what they were going for. Maybe Paddy Kingsland thought all these young viewers have just thought that the leading man has fallen to his death, so we've got to reassure them with this little soft music that actually everything's going to be okay. Um, so forgive that terrible explanation. I don't know much about music, like I said, but yeah, that part of the score I don't like, but the rest of it is really good, and it feels like it gets a lot done in about 3 minutes that the track is. Um, Showing the Fourth Doctor on the radio telescope to then falling, having all those flashbacks of the companions and the villains, and then regenerating and the reveal of the Watcher. All of that, it's the music goes with it really well. Tom Baker, he needed an epic send off, and the music does just that. Again, because it's Paddy Kingsland, he's sort of a composer you associate with the Fifth Doctor's era, so it's a hint of the problem I had with Keith McCulloch, where you just think maybe um, this is the music is sort of evoking feelings of another Doctor. But look, again, these are little criticisms I have with it. It is a fantastic track. I feel sad, because I do want to put this at number one. I love it, but I think I just I think yeah, you just have to say that the 10th Doctor's regeneration theme it's top one. And I'm gonna be putting this in second place. Oh, that's gone first. We'll put that in second. It is great. I really want to stress that. And as you can tell, it's beaten out all these different competitors. Um, but I just think 10th Doctor's regeneration theme, you can't really beat it, I'm afraid. Which might be the boring answer, putting that at number one. I know a lot of people would. But what about the 15th Doctor's regeneration theme? Well, that's an interesting one. It is. I feel like there's quite a bit to be said there because as this is the last one, it's the most recent regeneration theme, so I don't want to say there's recency bias. Uh, with me, I've listened to it enough times. I've listened to all of these that I have a pretty good idea. Some people there might be a bit of recency bias, or even it could be a factor that maybe means that you don't like it as much. If you're more familiar with some of these the holograms or the Shepherd's Boys, you may be more familiar with those. And the 15th Doctor's theme, it's still new, but it is good. And actually, I would say that the initial build up of the theme is the best part. The first maybe 30 seconds. I think the biggest problem is that the vocals are too loud. I haven't talked too much about the music mixing throughout these, but I really love the orchestral elements. The guitar and piano parts of it in particular I really like, but I think the vocals are a bit too loud. Um, Maybe even a bit drawn out. I don't know if I want to say that, particularly because the ending feels a little bit abrupt to the track. Um, so that's not doesn't exactly help its case. I think also another problem is that it just feels very sampled and a bit rushed. And I know a couple of other people sort of had that complaint, but I think because maybe the mixing of the elements isn't to my liking. I think it's one of those situations where actually I would say that if you're going to reorchestrate, then yeah, I'd be more than willing to listen to a reorchestration of the 15th Doctor's theme. It sounds good. As a bit of music, it is really good, and it is a variation of Joy to the World, which again works since the Doctor saying Joy to the World, and this has been an absolute joy, and all that. It's great, but yeah, I think if they were to reorchestrate this and just make it feel more complete and less the sort of sampled feel which it has, which actually usually the sampled music from Murray Gold is really good, but it kind of detracts from it here because again it's a little bit distracting. Um, but yeah, it's a bit like the third and sixth Doctor's themes where maybe a little bit of effort could have been put in, a little bit more. When you're using Where There's Tears There's Hope, when you're using that in the Reality War in the finale, a track that's about 8 years old, I think that's sort of telling um, that maybe behind the scenes there were some problems going on. What those problems would have been, were they rushed for time, were they out of ideas? It could be any number of things, but there's no point guessing. I think, yeah, like I said, if they reorchestrated it, I think it would be better. But because, of course, we're judging the broadcast version, where I just think the vocals are a little bit too repetitive. They dominate the track. It's going to be it's in B tier. It is in B tier. But it's just a question of, it's better than TV movie. I don't know if it's better than, I'd probably rather listen to it than the 13th Doctor theme, but I think that is probably objectively better. Then it would be a bit harsh to say Ginakanola to say this was better than his. Is it better than the Night of the Doctor? It's a hard one. This one, at least, the Night of the Doctor, when you listen to that music, as good as it is, and as well as it fits in the theme, it kind of goes back to the problem I had before, where you don't really think of the Eighth Doctor when you hear that music. If someone plays 1969 on Trust Me, you're going to picture the 11th Doctor at Lake Silencio or in any other number of locations, but you don't picture the Eighth Doctor. But at least in years to come, when we hear the 15th Doctor's regeneration theme, if we just hear any element of it, the vocals, whatever part of it, we're going to associate that with the 15th Doctor, with the reality war, with this weird time that we live in as Doctor Who fans where the future's unclear. That's what we're going to associate it with. And as a result, I'm going to be putting this in B, and it's going to be above the 8th Doctor's theme. So this is pretty much the final ranking. I'm just thinking, would I change anything? I think D tier, yeah, I'd feel harsh putting the 14th Doctor's bi-generation theme in D tier. It's not far off it, mind you. Just keep that in mind. But yeah, it's going to stay with the Sad Man with the Box. In B tier, yeah, I think these all belong there. For what they did with the War Games and Colour, the fact that the music is actually quite good, I think it deserves a spot in A. At the bottom of A. Not too far off B. Same with the 12th Doctor. It is really good. But yeah, I think certainly when I look at probably from, I mean, the 2nd and 11th Doctor I do really like, but probably this top 5, the 5th, 9th, 1st, 4th, and 10th. I think these 5 are standouts. And the 9th Doctor's one is on the tip of S tier, I just think, because it was reused from about 5 minutes before. It's not quite deserving of that S tier spot. And yeah, S tier, Vale Unis, which I've surprised myself putting it that high. It is great though, and because we don't really have a First Doctor regeneration theme, it's the next best thing. It's not really canon to me, but I like the music. But yeah, these two are the standouts. It's this the for the 4th Doctor, and in S tier at the very top is Valet de Shem, which probably hasn't come as a great surprise. I think most people would probably put that at the top. And I'm pretty happy with that list. So we're going to leave it as it is before I start overthinking it and changing it around. But if you're looking at this and thinking, what on earth is this, mate? Tell me. Tell me what your ranking would be. I'd love to know. Am I crazy for putting the 3rd Doctor's theme in D tier, the 15th in B tier, or the 1st Doctor's Twice Upon a Time regeneration theme in S tier? I surprised myself there. But yeah, let me know. Make your own rankings. Put them in the comments. And of course, if you could subscribe to get me to 1,000 subscribers, it would mean a lot. There's going to be some sort of video plan for that, maybe some sort of Q&A. We'll see. But there's going to be some more music-themed videos coming up. There's going to be perhaps a tutorial for making your own unreleased music. Ooh, that could be pretty exciting. There could also be, well, there is going to be, where I reveal some of the craziest things I found working with Doctor Who audio, including things that I think we were never meant to hear. But you'll find out what that's all about. If you want to check out any Doctor Who music isolations, check out the Doctor Who Lost Scores project. We're really trying to get more subs to that channel. It's on about 50 at the moment. If we could get that to 100, 200 subs in the near future, that would be amazing. I've got some classic series music planned on there, working through the Ambassadors of Death at the moment. Yeah, I could do some more tiered lists, tier ranking, companion themes, Doctor Who theme tunes, any number of things. Let me know what you want in the comments. On a final note, as I'm talking extremely quickly, it's the 62nd anniversary. This is a sort of 62nd anniversary special, and it's always nice to celebrate these milestones. It's kind of difficult to really quickly put into words what the show means to me, but I think the fact I've sat here for probably like an hour, I've lost track of time, but the fact I've sat here for this long talking about regeneration themes and putting them in a tier list, I think that probably articulates the point that I love the show more than any of my waffling ever could. But that is going to be everything. So like, comment, share, any of that stuff helps out the channel. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers. If you want to get your grandma to be the 1,000th person to subscribe to me, or some guy walking down the street, whatever it would be, it would help out. It would mean a lot. Like I said. So that is going to be everything. I'll see you guys very soon. There's going to be more content in the festive season coming up, and I look forward to it. I will see you later.